just looking at it, I can tell this is a right eye. And it's the position of this lacrimal gland that tells me that. Remember, it's superior and lateral, meaning this would be medial to the eyeball or midline itself. Outside, we find this white layer known as the sclera, the whites of the eye. We can see the 6 extrinsic muscles around here, the superior rectus, medial rectus, lateral rectus. Here's the tendon for the superior oblique. Down below, kind of being covered, is going to be our inferior rectus. And back here, we see the inferior oblique muscle. While 3 or 4 out of 6 of these are going to be controlled by the ocular motor or cranial nerve number 3, we'll have the lateral rectus being controlled by cranial nerve number 6, abducens, so that when this muscle contracts, leads to abduction of the eye, or at least appearance so, with the midline. Remember, all of your tears are produced up here in the lacrimal gland, which drains through lacrimal ducts and flow across the eye. Those tears are containing salts, they're containing ions, they're containing lysozymes to add antimicrobial activity to your tears before being collected by the lacrimal canals and ducts, which would be medial to the eyeball itself. On the outside, we find this clear, transparent structure known as the cornea. Just inside that cornea, we're going to find the anterior chamber to the anterior cavity, which is separated from the posterior chamber of the anterior cavity by the colored iris. Hole in the iris, which changes under differing light conditions or activation of your sympathetic and parasympathetic halves of the autonomic nervous system, give rise to this posterior chamber of the anterior cavity. Both the anterior chamber and posterior chamber of the anterior cavity are filled with aqueous humor. We finally find the lens, held in place by suspensory ligaments attached to ciliary processes coming off of the ciliary bodies, influenced by the ciliary muscles. This lens is used to gather and focus beams of light all the way back here. Number 18, we see the macula lutea, in the very center of which we should find the highest concentration of photoreceptors known as the fovea centralis. But in order for light to get back here to the macula lutea, it has to pass through the posterior chamber, which is filled with this more viscous vitreous humor, represented by this ball here. When we look at a cross-section of the eyeball, we find the outer tunical layer, right, the sclera, an underlying tunica vascularis, known as the choroid, and an innermost tunica nervosa, known as the retina. That's anything I'm going to ask you on this model.